Well, I am back out on the road again, and this time my travels have taken me to Long Beach, a city in the midst of change and revitalization. I begin my exploration of the city by heading over to the Queen Mary, where I meet up with Robin Walkner from the Queen Mary's Public Relations Office. Once the pride of the Cunard Cruise Line, the Queen Mary was the primary way that the business elite, world leaders, and Hollywood celebrities would travel. It was definitely the place to be seen. With those glorious days now gone, the Queen Mary now serves as both a museum and a hotel, providing visitors with a glimpse of a forgotten era. Working our way through a labyrinth of corridors of pipes, outdated control panels and gauges, Robin leads me through the engine room and into the belly of the ship. We pass through various ship compartments, passing some corridors where prior guests have reported seeing ghosts or things out of the ordinary, and into the ship's main passageways, linking the various decks, exhibits, and cabins with one another. Robin eventually leads me to one section of the ship where some of the larger staterooms are located. Despite being upgraded to meet the demands for today's travelers, these staterooms continue to retain their original charm and appeal, which have not faded away with the passing of time. Many of which are complete with large dining rooms, sitting rooms, multiple bedrooms, and large bathrooms. To help me better understand the legacy of the Queen Mary and to address my questions, Robin leads me over to one of the dining rooms where I meet up with the Queen Mary's in-house historian, Ronald Smith.
Well, the Queen Mary was owned and operated by the Cunard Steamship Company, probably Britain's premier merchant shipping line. The ship was actually built in Clydebank, Scotland during the Depression. Work began in December 1930, but because of the Depression, work stopped roughly a year later. And after about 2.5 years of negotiation, work resumed in the spring of '34. The ship was launched in September of that year by Their Majesties King George V and Queen Mary, for whom the ship is named. And then finally the ship went into service in May of 1936. Her maiden voyage actually began on May 27th, 1936, and the Queen Mary was intended for the North Atlantic passenger service. She would start out from Southampton, England, make a stop at Cherbourg, France to pick up more passengers, and then would travel across the Atlantic to New York City. And a typical crossing would take you about 4 days and 20 hours. And the ship was designed to accommodate 3 classes of passengers, first, second, and third, and each class would occupy its own area aboard the ship and enjoy a variety of facilities and amenities in their 4.5-day crossing. Now that service, which began in '36, came to an end in September 1939 with the declaration of World War II. On September 3rd, 1939, in fact, when Germany invaded Poland, England declared war on Germany. So from that time until March of 1940, the Queen Mary just lay idle in New York Harbor as they decided what they would do with the ship during the war. And ultimately, the British Admiralty decided that they would use her as a troop carrier because of her size and also because of her speed. She was one of the fastest passenger liners with a top speed of about 32 knots, which is about 36 miles per hour. So the ship was just filled with troops, and she was used from March of 1940 through September of 1946 to ferry thousands of Australian, New Zealand, and United States troops to various parts of the world, most especially when she would transport U.S. troops. She would go from New York City and drop them off at Gurrick, Scotland. And many times she was carrying a full division, and that means 15,000 men would be packed inside the ship. So when the war was over then, the ship was returned to her regular peacetime service of transporting passengers, and the 1950s really were the golden years for the Cunard Line. In addition to the Queen Mary, the sister ship to the Queen Mary, the Queen Elizabeth, traveled in tandem, and the two ships really attracted the cream of society, the best passengers that traveled at that time.